Every child deserves a safe place, but not every child has one. Growing up, I quickly learned that I need to find one. I was living with an abusive, alcoholic mother and a brother who was quickly following in her footsteps. I can remember as an 8-year-old boy, I hollowed out this crawl space in my box spring so I could avoid my mother's drunken rants. It's not how I want to live. It's not how anybody wants to live. I mean, would any of you want to live that way? I found myself at a local church where I met this angel. He didn't have wings. He didn't have a halo. In fact, he was the father of a school friend, a baseball coach. He said to me, "Eric, you know I coach baseball. I want you to be on our team." What he said to me was team, but what I heard was family. It was a desire for that family and the desire to serve others that led me to join the Army in 1996. That began an 11-year career, a career that I thought would go 22 years. We're going to fast forward to October 2nd, 2006. It's a very unique day for me. It's a day that was started with happiness and joy, but a day that ended in misery, in pain. On the morning of October 2nd, 2006, I was in Balad, Iraq. I had been there for 14 months. It was my second tour. I had conducted over 350 combat patrols. If you don't know what a combat patrol is, we were those individuals that you see on CNN that would knock on people's doors to discuss issues of freedom, help rebuild the infrastructure, schools, the government, provide running water, electricity, work with the Iraqi army and the Iraqi police. I was 27 days away from going home. 27 days. But it was a happy morning because I had raised my right hand and re-enlisted in the Army for 12 years. 12 more years of service in a combat zone. I must have been out of my mind, right? Who would give 12 more years of their life when you get shot at and blown up every day? I did, and I was proud to do it. Well, after that was over and felt like I was on cloud 9, I went ahead and I stood before 17 of my soldiers. They had become so much more. They were my brothers. They were my family. See, we had formed a bond that could never be replicated and one that could never be broken. But what do you say to those young men when they're 27 days away from going home? How do you keep them from being complacent and remind them of why they're there, what their purpose is, who they're there to serve, who they're there to protect? Because it wasn't just the person to their right or their left. It was the people of Iraq. Try to keep it simple. And I said, please treat this patrol as if it's one of your first and not one of your last. Like each and every single one of us do, like when your parents ask you to do something or somebody else asks you to do something, you shake your head, yeah, okay. Went in one ear and out the other. They didn't care. But we jumped in our Humvees and we headed out the gates of Balad Air Base, which is located about 30 miles northeast of Baghdad. Out onto this road we came to know as Route Linda. It's a long, windy road, infamous for improvised explosive devices and ambushes. As we went out the gate, I looked at my driver, Cam, this tall, lanky kid from Kansas City. We didn't say a word. We both just wanted to get home, wanted to make it through the day without a scratch on us. About 3 minutes into that patrol, I noticed something was wrong. There was no traffic on the road. And in Iraq, there's always traffic on the road. I didn't have time to worry about it. No time to think about it. I had 4 radios I had to answer. I had reports that I had to send. I had to take care of my brothers, that family that I had always wanted. Well, I came to the top of this hill, and down off to the right-hand side in a clearing, I noticed a gathering of white pickup trucks. Amongst them, a black sedan. I didn't tell Cam to stop. My experience told me what was going on, why the road was clear of traffic. I knew what was going to happen. But I allowed Cam to continue down that road. And as we approached that clearing, I noticed 3 young men in the sedan. And I stared at the passenger for what seemed like 3 or 4 minutes. It was only 3 or 4 seconds. No sooner did I break eye contact, boom! The road violently erupted on my Humvee for a 17th time in just 9 months. Picked the Humvee up on its side, slammed it back to the ground, instantly setting it on fire, crippling not only the vehicle, but everybody inside. The blast, so strong, tore the ligaments in my left knee, caused a spinal cord injury, a traumatic brain injury. The strap that held on my protective Kevlar helmet was shredded, sending my helmet across the Humvee like a projectile, slamming my head into the radio mount, rendering me unconscious for a 6th time in just 7 months. When I came to a few minutes later, the smoke was burning my eyes. The dust and the debris were infiltrating my lungs. I could hear the faint crackle of the Humvee burn around me over the ringing in my ears. I did something that I was all too familiar in doing. I started to pat myself down. I was checking to make sure I still had my arms, my legs, sure there was no blood on my hands. And I still wonder to this day how I still had all my body parts, how my hands weren't covered in blood. My focus then instantly shifted to Cam. I couldn't see him in the driver's seat. The smoke was so thick. It took all the energy I could muster to push the smoke aside like 2 heavy curtains. And when I did, there was the worst image I'd ever seen in 2 years of combat. Cam, my brother, lifeless, barely breathing, and severely wounded. A piece of me died in that Humvee. I wanted to die in that Humvee. I gave up. I quit. Well, a little while later, as Cam laid in surgery, I sat on a hospital bed back on Balad Air Base. That image of Cam was burned into my mind. My commander walked in, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he said, "Sergeant Millett, it's not your fault. You don't know who your enemy is. You can't control your enemy." It was as if he knew what I was thinking, like he knew how I felt. But he wasn't there that morning. He didn't see what I saw. And I believed wholeheartedly that I could have prevented what happened to Cam. He then said to me, "Would you like me to call your mother?" And reluctantly, I agreed. So he pulled out his satellite phone, which has about as much privacy as your cell phone on speaker, for those of you that like to use your cell phone on speaker. And he started to dial her number. She answered. And when she did, he identified himself and gave a very brief description of what had happened. And then there were some words said that no child should ever have to hear from their parent, especially their mother. "I'm busy. Can you call me back?" And the phone went silent, never to be heard from again. It was right there on that bed that I felt like a little 8-year-old boy again, wanting to crawl inside my box spring. I started to build a prison in my mind. Those walls built by guilt, anger, and shame. And it only got worse in December of 2007, when that family that I'd always known was ripped away from me. Everything I worked for my entire adult life was gone. My ability to serve was over. The Army had forced me to medically retire. They no longer wanted me. So what was I to do? I locked myself in a solitary confinement within that prison. isolated myself from my family, those young men that I serve with, my friends. 4 months I sat in my apartment, depressed, angry, not knowing what I was going through. I didn't understand the invisible wounds of war, what was going on in my mind. How could I expect anybody else to? My physical wounds had healed. Thoughts of suicide just plagued my mind. That image of Cam, I couldn't get rid of it. Shame and guilt rocked me to the core. I self-medicated heavily with alcohol. Until one day I decided, you know what? It's not worth it. None of this is worth it. I went out and I purchased a handgun and a lot of alcohol. When I got home, I sat the handgun down on the table and I started to clean it. I thought about Cam, all those brave men and women that I had served with, the great things we had done, the people we had helped, the places we had been. I started to drink. It's a one-man pity party. And I started to load rounds in the magazine. Click, click, click. I was about to become a statistic. One of 22 veterans a day who take their own life. 22 a day. That's one every 65 minutes. So before you move on to your next service project today, a veteran will have taken their life in this country. Obviously, I didn't take my own life that day. I drank so much that I passed out. And the next morning, I walked out into my kitchen. I saw the handgun and all the empty alcohol containers. I thought to myself, who are you? You're not the man who honorably served his country, who led those men into combat, who helped so many people, who served so honorably. I was at the bottom. I needed help. So I picked up the phone and I called 911. On the other end of that line was a young lady. Her voice, I'll never forget. Her face, sadly, I'll never know. She didn't tell me she was too busy and asked me to call her back. What she did was reach through the phone and pull me from one of the deepest, darkest places I ever been in my life. She gave me a sliver of hope, of courage, and of strength. And with that, I checked myself into the hospital, the mental health ward of a hospital. Think about that for a minute. Where would you have to be in your life, or where would anybody have to be in their lives to make that decision? That'd be pretty bad, wouldn't it? Well, that's where I was. While I was in the hospital, I met this young man. He was an Afghanistan veteran, battling the same invisible wounds that I was. So I went from feeling like I was the only one and that nobody understood to, well, maybe somebody does understand. Maybe somebody can help me. Maybe there is hope. I remember him saying to me one day, Eric, when you leave here, you need to get a hold of this organization. They'll make you part of their family. They'll help you. They'll understand. I said, well, who's that? He said, Wounded Warrior Project. I have no idea who Wounded Warrior Project was at the time. And here I am speaking to you, so you think I've turned my life around and I listened to him. Nope. I didn't listen to a word he said. Heck, he was in the hospital for the same reason I was. What the heck did he know? For the next 4 years, my life was a roller coaster. I had a lot of great days, but I had even more bad days. A lot of highs, but I had even more lows. I was alone. And it wasn't until November 2012 when I was at the bottom again. Alone, confused, not knowing who I was, drinking heavily, putting a gun in my mouth more than a spoon or a fork, that I needed to pick up the phone again. But I didn't call 911. I called Wounded Warrior Project. And they were busy, but not too busy. They didn't ask me to call them back. They listened to what I had to say. They heard my story, told me they understood, told me I wasn't alone, and made me part of their family. Wounded Warrior Project gave me the strength to turn my life around. 180 degrees since November 2012. They gave me the strength and the power to share my story, to serve others again. They taught me once again what it was like to be part of a team, to have self-confidence, to make an impact in others' lives, to change someone else's life. So as I sat there and suffered in silence, I didn't realize that over 460,000 other returning Iraq and Afghanistan veterans were doing the same. That over 320,000 returned with a traumatic brain injury or a spinal cord injury, just like I had. That over 60,000 had been wounded, just as I had. I didn't understand that. The Wounded Warrior Project sent me on a retreat known as Project Odyssey, where I could share stories of struggle and success with other Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. Help me find my new normal, to learn to serve and have a sense of purpose again, of pride. While I was there, Wounded Warrior Project, they made sure that my mind was well adjusted. They had me up off my couch, exercising, feeling good. My body was energized. They sat me down with the Warriors to Work specialist who helped me translate my experiences in the military into terms that civilians could understand, so that when I got home, I didn't have to stand the unemployment line. It felt great to be economically empowered. They got me engaged. I see some heads flip up when I said that. No, Wounded Warrior Project did not introduce me to a woman. They do not have dating services. They kept me engaged with other warriors so I could continue that peer-to-peer support, the most effective type of recovery that I've had, next to sharing my story with others, raising awareness. But Wounded Warrior Project stole two things from me. How many of you, by a show of hands, like having something stolen from them? Nobody? Can I have all your iPhones, please, then? Because you're not going to mind, because you all like having things stolen from you, right? Yeah, I didn't think so. They stole any thought of suicide or any desire to self-medicate with alcohol. Haven't done either one since November of 2012. Wounded Warrior Project not only changed my life, they impacted it so much that they saved my life. And they've done that to the lives of over 58,000 other warriors and over 8,000 other family members. Every single day, Wounded Warrior Project makes a difference. Every single day, all of you can make a difference. It doesn't have to be in the life of a veteran. It can be in the life of another adult, your friend, your family, someone you don't even know that you just say hello to on the street. Saying hello to somebody, asking them how their day is, you'd be surprised what that could do to somebody. Because everybody in this room is going through something in their life that you may feel like you're the only one, that nobody understands. And you don't know how you're going to get through it if you ever will. But if someone says, "How are you? How's your day?" You could be in a dark place, and that could change your entire outlook. And all of you are going to make that impact. All of you are going to do that through your service. So give yourselves a round of applause. Some of you may be wondering, "Eric, I know somebody who sounds exactly like what you're talking about." Because warriors, veterans, we're everywhere. We're in your families, your churches, your schools, your workplace, your neighborhoods. If you know somebody, please send them to woundedwarriorproject.org so they can read about our 20 programs and services that we provide at no cost to them. Tell them about me. Tell them about what I had to say today. Let them know that they're not alone. Service just doesn't involve a project. It's every single day. Making a difference every single day in simple, small, little ways. I'll leave you with this. Remember, in everything that you do, the greatest casualty is being forgotten. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I don't have to yell.
At this time, we'll have a little Q&A. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Millett?
Sir, can you please stand up? Yeah, I make you do that. used a bad word. Convinced. From experience, and it's nothing against you, from experience, you can't convince somebody to do something they don't want to do. And when you take a veteran who's gone through combat and experiences that are very traumatic, it takes a long time. I was sitting down with a young lady that I met today. I don't know if she's in here. I don't see her. Veronica. And I explained to her that PTSD and traumatic events take a long time to unfold. I made a lot of decisions as a combat patrol leader. The 17 young men that I started with are not the same 17 that I ended with. I never lost one in combat. I've lost 3 at home. You can't convince someone to do something. We had to suppress a lot in combat, and when you get home, it takes a long time for it to unfold. You can tell them about my story. You can tell them they're not alone. Encourage them, but don't push. There's certain warning signs. Suicide is 22 veterans a day. September happens to be Suicide Awareness Month. Don't let them go down that path. At that point, then you need to intervene. But don't push, because pushing only makes them suppress it deeper and want to hide it and make them feel isolated and different. Treat them like they're a normal person, but encourage them to seek help. Support. Great question. Sir.
You know,
Yes. Well, first of all, Tori, it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for your service. Finding a new normal. But, I mean, what is normal to begin with? For you, it's who you were before that traumatic event. For me, that event happened to be combat, and a lot of it. So when I came home, I used to be able to do 10,000 things. When I got home, I can only do 9,000 of them. So which ones did I focus on? You think I focused on the 9,000 I could still do, or the 1,000 I couldn't do? Which one? The 1,000 I couldn't do. That was my new normal. Focusing on things that I couldn't do, self-pity. So my journey to a new normal was trying to focus on those 9 things that I could do and how I could do them, maybe not the same, but in a different way. Traumatic experiences change people, whether it's sexual trauma or a car accident, 9/11, combat. You have to find what works for you. Find a support system and realize that you can't do those 1,000 things anymore, but how well can you do the other 9,000 that you used to be able to do? And I think that was,
one more question.
I don't know, I can't see because of the lights. I see hands.
One more.
Okay, last question.
Last question.
How is my relationship with my mother? It is non-existent. That was part of finding my new normal. I've grown as a man. I've accepted what happened as a child. I accepted what she decided not to do. And the man I am today is because of me and the choices that I decided to make by not going to jail, drugs, or killing myself. I want to thank you all for allowing me to speak and raise some awareness. Good luck with all your service projects and all your future endeavors. And thank you for all that you'll be doing in the future.
Thank you.